Welcome back to the Talk of the Town podcast. Here with Dunstable Town Manager Steve O'Reilly. Steve-O,
How you doing, mate?
we go again, mate. Pre-season training starts tomorrow, and then we're back Tuesday, Thursday. Friendly starting really soon, mate. How are the lads shaping up as we go into the new season?
Yeah, excited, I hope. I know that obviously we get started tomorrow. It's the usual time of year. Some lads will be away on holiday and stuff, but yeah, no, we've got a good turnout already lined up for tomorrow. Some, obviously returning faces, which is obviously good news for us. And there's some new faces that we're going to be pretty excited to see, and see what they can do for us. So yeah, really excited.
What's the one thing you'll be looking for this pre-season? Like I said to you, probably about 4 weeks ago now when we sat down at our chat in the hub. Very different for you now, this pre-season. We've had all of last year's campaign to go off. This pre-season is what you're probably going to call a proper pre-season. Last year was a bit hustle-bustle. You had just joined the club. What's the few things that you're really going to look for in pre-season training? Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things, I guess, really. So a bit of an evolution and progress from the lads who are part of the group last year. We're kind of well documented initially, last year about kind of the youth element that we had. So, a lot of these boys are going to be a year further on than where they were obviously 12 months ago. So you're looking for that kind of development from them individually. I think that, what's a really big benefit for us, and I think we'll probably see it more so in the games, but, we'll see it in training as well, which will be, there'll be a comfort with a lot of the players in terms of the structure, in terms of how we want to be able to play. We could talk about formations and things like that, but the philosophy that we've got and the style that we try and play football. So, I'm looking for, first and foremost, those players who are already part of the group, who have been there, who, we've got a good crop who are going to be still here, who were there last year, already embedding that, and then the new players, obviously we're adding new players to try and bring something different to the table. But also you're looking for them and how quickly they can adapt to it. And, you're looking for those current players to kind of aid them in terms of being able to do that. And then I think the other part of it is really just, trying to evolve what we're doing in terms of, the style of play or some tactical things. So again, those players who've been with us for a longer period of time, actually, can we add a little bit more complexity into it, or can we add something different in terms of what we try and do, and look for those lads to take it on board. There's all the usual pre-season things as well. You're looking for kind of what condition these lads are going to come back in. I'm pretty confident that our lads are going to be in pretty good shape for that. But you're looking for, again, there'll be some new players that we'll be able to take a look at. You're looking at the attitudes, how much they buy into in terms of what we want to do. So there's lots that you look for, but actually, we're looking just to get back and play football, right? And just to get back in terms of how we want to play. We did a lot of good things for a large portion of last season, made some good progress from where we were at the start. And yeah, just excited to see the boys make another step forward of that. How important is attitude? I remember 3 or 4 years ago sitting down chatting to someone like Joe Deeney, and he said to me, you get a lot from the players' attitude, because if you can't be up for a pre-season training when it's nice and sunny, I do worry what's going to happen like November, December, January. So how much as a manager do you look into the attitude of a player at pre-season?
Yeah, you do. Look, you kind of know, like, kind of how our sessions run. They're high intensity. It's all pretty much ball related, but it is high intensity, and there's a high demand, and I have really high standards in terms of that. So, again, talking about kind of what we're going to be looking for, I'll be looking for, those players who've been with us, who know what those expectations are, to be setting what that standard looks like. And I'll be looking at those newer players and going, actually, how close are you to that? And yeah, you're always looking at those types of things. We want to put them under pressure in pre-season. We want it to be difficult, and we want it to, challenge them in ways. And you are looking for how people respond to that. But yeah, as you say, look, I mean, if you can't get, if you've not been playing football for 2 months, I'm looking for enthusiasm. I'll be looking for, on Tuesday, let's say hard work, but I want lads to be enjoying their football and relishing the challenge ahead of us. And yeah, look, if you can't get up for, like I say, tomorrow's going to be hopefully another nice day. And it'll be, a great session that Rich and Brandon, who's come on board, that we'll talk about, when those guys are on board and delivering, really good sessions, I'm expecting those boys to be absolutely lapping it up, right? You've not played football in 2 months for some of them. It's a good opportunity to get back out and do it.
What's the biggest difference, would you say, nowadays in pre-season? Obviously, me and you probably remember the days of... Someone texted me today actually saying, when are you back, Andy, for pre-season? So we're back tomorrow. And they're like, is the bleep machine ready? I'm like, it might still work for some clubs, but I think pre-season is very different now. What would you say? Obviously, like we said to you last season, you have a long stop playing, but now as a manager, what's the biggest difference between pre-season, say 5-6 years ago even, to what you guys do now?
Yeah, I mean, it is different. like I say, the way that I want to do it, it doesn't, like I say, I still think it's demanding. As you say, there will be clubs where you are, you're doing the bleep tests or it's going hill running, all those types of things. And I did it, and I actually enjoyed it. So it was not something that I didn't like. I look at it in just a slightly different way in terms of, I feel like we've got a pretty finite period of time that we can work with players. The season starts, 26th of July, which is fine, no problem with that. That's when it starts, but it doesn't really give a long period of time for you to actually do pre-season. So, from my perspective, I want to use as many opportunities to embed how we want to be able to play. So I look at that. So that is a bit different. I think that again, you're always trying to balance out as well. If I go and spend the first 2 sessions or 3 sessions or 4 sessions, which is just fitness work, for example, that could be great and that could be good, but there'll be, which I already know this week, there's 2 or 3 lads who are going to be a big part of what we do next season who aren't here this week. They're on holiday. So does that mean that they don't do that work? And then the lads who are, there'll be a couple of them will be going to IB, who will be going somewhere in the next couple of weeks as well. And so, those 2 hours or 2 hours we have tomorrow and the 2 hours that we have on Thursday, if we use all of that up in terms of, non-football related stuff, just from a personal perspective, I think it maybe potentially is a little bit of a waste, but like I say, it's horses, courses, and it's kind of preferences. And like I say, I'm still expecting them to work really hard. I think the other thing actually would be that I just think actually generally the lads come back in actually pretty good condition a lot of the time. We're a young group, and so maybe kind of the idea is, back maybe 10, 15 years ago where, you'd stop playing and then for 2 months you didn't do anything at all, and it was just on the beers and all that type of stuff, and you come back 2 or 3 stone overweight maybe for certain people. I just don't really see that so much. You may get the odd case of that, but like I say, I think lads are pretty good now at looking after their own fitness in those ways. So yeah, look, I think it has evolved. I think just the way football played has evolved. We're going to go and do, we're booked out on a 4G pitch for pre-season, right? And, I've spent a lot of pre-seasons where you can't do that. You can't use your main pitch. And so you're in a park somewhere, right? And so
does the 4G play a bit of a difference at pre-season? I know we obviously had it last season. We're finding used to it, but does that play a factor into pre-season?
I mean, I think it does. I think that if we're really fortunate that we've got access to be able to use a quality facility like that. So again, you do want to kind of utilize it as much as possible. So if you can get 2 hours on a 4G pitch, you want to again try and get as many kind of football related activities and work out there that you can do. So yeah, it maybe does. But again, I think that it's really about what, just being clear from a coach's perspective or manager, in my case, what you want the outcomes to be from your sessions and from your pre-season. And so, as I said, I think for me, we're looking as we're going into this season, there's a core of a really good group here. We've already added some and we're going to add some more, quality additions to that. I want them to get as used to playing with each other, to build those relationships, those partnerships that we saw the benefit of, last year as we went through the season. I want to try and get as much of that done in our pre-season as well, so that like when we start on the 26th of July, as different to where it was last year, actually there's not a lot of kind of brand new feel to it. And that was clearly the case last year. There's no hiding away from that. We were adding players, even into the early weeks of the season, but all the way through pre-season, you were kind of adding 1 or 2 and you're going through the games and there wasn't really any kind of consistency with that. That'll be different again for us this year.
Just talk us through the first couple of friendlies, Steve, before we get into the new additions to the coaching team. Obviously, this time in the month, our second friendly would have been upon us, opening up against Sarah and Leighton Town.
So Oxy,
Oxy on the Tuesday.
Yeah, Leighton, yeah. So we've got, I think we've got a really good balance in terms of what we've got for pre-season. So look, Sarah was obviously a team that we played last year, and they came up here, so it's nice for us to be able to go back out there. Good club, good fixture for us. They're always competitive and always good games. Oxy, very similar. They're a good step 6 team, young team. They'll give us a really good test. And then, great game for us hopefully to be able to play on here against Leighton. Obviously a local game. We played them last season. It was a really good game in the cup last year, and we know that that'll be a really good test for us. So, really exciting and good games for players to be involved in. All the way through pre-season. We've got Clapton away, which is going to be a really great fixture, and obviously it's a bit of a trophy game that we're going to go and play in there. Hartford and Leverstock. Those are all proper games for us. Good tests. We'll test all the things that we're going to need from day one at the start of the season. We've already discussed it. It's going to be a really competitive season. There's going to be a lot of good teams in it. And so, you know, we want to get the lads as conditioned as possible to what that looks like. So that, again, on 26th of July, we're ready to hit the ground running.
Just finishing up, Steve, obviously a little tweak to the coaching team that we've got down at Dunstable Town. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Brandon is joining. So he was previously at Osei last year. So we're really keen to get him involved. You know, Rob and Liam still involved in terms of what we're doing, but, you know, they've got other commitments at times. So, you know, we kind of always felt last year that there was probably a need for another coach. So an opportunity arose for us to be able to do that. So it was something that we wanted to be able to do. You know, I still like to get my hands dirty, I guess, at times and get out there and coach. But, you know, certainly found that, you know, as the season goes on, it's more and more difficult. You know, there's lots of different responsibilities from management on a training session night, you know, whether that's, you know, physios, injured players, you know, players that you're trying to assess, and particularly in pre-season as well. You know, we will have, you know, there's 4 or 5 that are coming in that I know a lot about. You know, we've got a good group already, but there are going to be 5 or 6 certainly, you know, starting from tomorrow that I'll want to be able to kind of really observe and take time to be able to do. And that's not always the easiest when you're actually trying to deliver as well. So, you know, Brandon, really ambitious coach, you know, young coach, but has been in and around the league, you know, like I say, was at Osei last season. So, you know, he'll be a really good addition to it. And obviously working alongside Rich, you know, he's an outstanding coach, and the quality of Rich, you know, that's going to provide a really good platform for these boys in terms of the sessions that they're going to get. They're going to be always going to be really high quality. So yeah, we're excited to get Brandon on board as well.
Steve, I'm looking forward to the training, mate. We're back tomorrow night, like you say. You and I will catch up as pre-season goes along. Our first game is not long; it's on the 5th. But mate, I'll catch you tomorrow.
Nice one.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.